Hello, my name is Frank Christensen and I'm the coordinator of officials for IFAF Europe. This is the first of 2 training tapes dealing with roughing the kicker. In this training tape, we'll deal specifically with kickers that are still in the pocket or in the tackle box, so to speak. So we'll have a look at some examples and talk about what is enough and what isn't enough, and when is it running into and when is it roughing and when is it nothing at all. And we'll talk some philosophy on that also. But before we get there, let's have a look to see what the rulebook and the MOFO have to say on this topic. In the rulebook, we start in definitions 227.3, kicker and holder. A, the kicker is any player who punts, drop kicks, or place kicks according to rule. He remains the kicker until he has had a reasonable time to regain his balance. B, a holder is a player who controls the ball on the ground or on the kicking team. During a scrimmage kick play, he remains the holder until no player is in position to make the kick, or, if the ball is kicked, until the kicker has had a reasonable time to regain his balance. In Rule 9116, dealing with roughing the kicker. When it is obvious that a scrimmage kick will be made, no opponent shall run into or rough the kicker or the holder of a place kick. 1. Roughing is a live ball foul that endangers the kicker or holder. 2. Running into the kicker or holder is a live ball foul that occurs when the kicker or holder is displaced from his kicking or holding position but is not roughed. 3. Incidental contact with the kicker or holder is not a foul. 4. The kicker's protection under this rule ends A, when he has had reasonable time to regain his balance, or B, when he carries the ball outside the tackle box before kicking. 5. When a defensive player's contact against the kicker or holder is caused by an opponent's block, and that can be legal or illegal, there is no foul for running into or roughing. 6. A player who makes contact with the kicker or holder after touching the kick is not charged with running into or roughing the kicker. 7. When a player other than one who blocks a scrimmage kick runs into or roughs the kicker or holder, it is a foul. And 8. When in question whether the foul is running into or roughing, the foul is roughing. In the MOFO, we go to 3 contact fouls. 7. Roughing and running into the kicker. A. Generally, contact with the kicker's kicking leg will be considered as running into the kicker, and contact with the plant leg, even if it is off the ground, will be considered as roughing the kicker. B. Anytime the kicker or holder are knocked off their feet, it should be called as roughing. And C. Where the kicker makes a move before the kick that is not part of the normal kicking motion, it is no longer obvious that a kick will be made, and there will probably be no foul unless the defensive player is out to punish him. Note that rugby-style kickers, those who kick on the run, are entitled to as much protection as conventional kickers after they have kicked the ball. But any contact with the kicker before the kick is simply tackling a ball carrier. D. Even if the snap is bad, a kick may still be obvious. Provided the kicker or holder gathers the ball and straight away goes into his normal motion, then he is entitled to protection, always assuming the ball is kicked. And finally, when in doubt principles, number 37 says the foul is roughing rather than running into the kicker. So that was the theory, that was the book. Now let's go have a look at some real live examples in the game film. Before we move to the fouls, we'll start out with a few plays that are legal. And in this one, the contact, whatever contact there is legal because the defensive player who makes the contact with the punter also blocked the kick. So from this angle, it's difficult to say how much contact there really is, but it really doesn't matter because whatever contact there is legal because of the block. The referee also does a good job here of signaling that there is no foul because the block was kicked. So good coverage on this play. Here's another legal play. And the reason here is not because the ball is blocked or the kick is blocked, because he does get the kick off, but simply because when he muffs this kick, it no longer is evident or is plausible or whatever you want to call it that a kick is going to be made. You know, as soon as he takes that step, as soon as he starts running, he may kick the ball, he may also keep running with the ball, and if you look at the defender who actually contacts him, he is not going to block the kick necessarily. He's just as much trying to tackle the runner, so he certainly thinks that at least there's a chance that this is going to be a run and he's going to get a chance to tackle the runner instead of a kick. So I'm not saying just because the ball is muffed that it's never going to be obvious that a kick is made, but here the kicker really gets out of his kicking motion and he turns away from facing the line of scrimmage. So in this case, I do think that this movement is enough that takes him away from the kicking motion, that this contact is illegal. Here's another example of contact that just isn't enough for a flag and a good no call by this referee. See, there is contact, but it doesn't rise to the level of certainly roughing or even running into, even though there is contact, but we'll get into a couple of running into later in this game here, or later in this training tape. This example just isn't enough for a good for a foul and a good no call by this referee and center judge. So here's the last legal play in this training tape, and now we're getting to the line. Now we're getting very close. I just don't think that this is quite enough for a flag. Yes, there is contact, and the punter is pushed a little bit, but if you look at his upper body, there's no real effect on the contact, and if we call this, then we have a whole lot of other situations we also need to call. So we're getting very close to the line in the sand, but I think this is on one side of the sand, and the next play we'll see is on the other side of the sand. Moving into the running into the kicker, keeping the last play in mind, let's have a look at this contact, and I just think there's a little bit more oomph in this one. So now we're going into situations where there's just too much to ignore. I think if you compare this one to the last one, you see his upper body kind of move down, and he's hit while he's in the air, and he's turned around, and there's just a little bit more here. So the last one was okay. This one is too much to ignore, and this one should be called as a running into the kicker. Here's another example of where contact is it's enough to ignore, but it's not enough for a roughing. So right there, the way that the defender hits the kicker's leg and spins him around is just too much to ignore, and therefore it would be a good call for running into the kicker because it's just not enough for a roughing. We now move into the roughing the kicker category, and we're going to start with a couple of plays where the primary contact, like this, is to the body of the punter, and this is simply too much. Timing of it is good, or good in terms of this being a foul. You'll notice the kicking leg hasn't made it back down to the ground, and the contact itself does place the kicker in jeopardy to be injured. So this is a situation where there's just too much forcible contact to the kicker's body, and this is a good call for roughing the kicker. Here's another situation where there's just too much contact to the body. Now, you may argue here that there's also contact to the kicking leg, but if you notice how the punter falls down, he doesn't just spin around because his kicking leg was hit. He's actually hit in the body also, and when there's this much contact, whether the first contact is to the kicking leg or to the body, with this much contact, this is a good call by the referee, and we'll have confirmation of that from the end zone shot. Here's the end zone shot, and it's very close to the same angle as the referee gets, and here we can clearly see what happens to the kicker, and this contact is simply just too much. So you may argue that the first contact right there is primarily to the leg, but when there's this much contact to the entire punter as such, including the body, this is just too much to let go as a running into. So this is a correct call for roughing. In this play, we're moving away from the body, and now the contact is only to the kicking leg, or maybe even only to the kicking foot. But even though we only have contact to the kicking foot, and even though we have a rule of thumb that says if the contact is to the kicking leg, then it's running into, and if it's a planned leg, it's roughing. Here, there's simply, it's only a rule of thumb. Here, there's just too much contact, and this action places the kicker in risk of danger. So this is a roughing the kicker. This should be called as roughing the kicker. The last two examples, we're looking at the plant leg. So the punter's plant leg, like here, when that gets swept away, this will hesitate to say always, but I'm very tempted to say this will always be roughing the kicker when the punter's plant leg is swept away like this, because this will always put the kicker in risk of danger. So in this situation, the correct call would be roughing the kicker. In this last play, we see a similar situation where the punter's plant leg is swept away, and it's not as violent as the previous one, but again, if the plant leg is swept like this, in this manner, then it will pretty much always be personal foul, roughing the kicker. So here, that would be the correct call. And that was the training tape. I hope it made sense, and I hope you found something you can use on the field.